When it comes to making decisions about your money, do not let yourself get sidetracked from your goals. Today, I'm going to be breaking down how to form habits, maintain focus, and how to build the expertise that will allow you to trust your own decision making, and how all of that relates to finding success in the financial world. Let's get into it. Growing up, most of us are told some very detrimental lies about money, and I get it. It's what people have been taught before them, so of course it's what they're going to pass down. But what people don't understand is money is a great facilitator. Money doesn't say anything about who you are as a person. It doesn't mean that you're good. It doesn't mean that you're bad. And that's one of the biggest lies that people are told. People are told that money is the root of all evil. That definitely is not true. Money is the great facilitator. This is why the greatest charities in the world, what is the thing that keeps them alive? Money. So money can do incredibly good things. It can also do incredibly bad things. That's why I just say it's the great facilitator. I'm not saying whether it facilitates something good or bad, but what you do with it is going to determine its power. Money is potential. Once you understand that money is potential, now it just becomes a question of what exactly is it that you're trying to do with the money. And so getting people to get out of their own way around what money is critically important. And so I want people to really understand that it is the currency that facilitates things. When you think about your own life, would you go into work for free? And the answer is no matter how much good people want to do in the world, to eat, to have a roof over your head, you're going to need money. To get other people to do the things that you want them to do, whether that's make food for you, whether that's fix roads, whether that's to create an after-school program, all of that requires money. It's just what we as a civilization have decided we're going to use as a way to manifest value, to store value, to transfer value across time and space. And so money is the way in which we sock away our energy and efforts. So you go to work, you work really hard, that's where you're putting your energy and effort. They then give you money. That allows you to carry that energy and effort across time so that as time passes, you have a way of planning for the future so that that could buy you a loaf of bread tomorrow, it could buy you a house in 5 years, whatever the case may be. But understanding that money isn't something that was made up recently by the government in order to hold people back or to allow quote unquote rich people to take advantage of other people. What money is fundamentally is it is an entry in a database that allows you to store your efforts across time and space. Once you understand that, then you understand why I say that it's the great facilitator. Now, the other lie that people are told about money is that if you have a lot of it, you have either done something bad to acquire it or you're a bad person for acquiring a lot of it. But if money really is the way that we allow value to be carried across time and space, then somebody who's able to leverage their time well in a way that can be put into money and carried across time and space, they have shown that they have a level of efficiency with how they spend their time and energy. Because the way that you get money for doing something is by making things more convenient, by solving a problem for somebody, by making something easy that was previously difficult. You, in essence, if you're getting money, you have created something in the world that somebody would rather have that thing than that money. So for instance, in my own life, when we were building Quest, what we were trying to do is say, okay, there are people that want to eat cake, cookie, pies, ice cream, but they want to stay in shape. And so they want somebody to make food that they can choose based on taste, and it happens to be good for them. Now, the problem is that's very difficult to do, and it's very difficult to do at scale, and it's tremendously difficult to do at scale in a way that's shelf stable. And so we put 18 months just into formulation. We put an ungodly amount of time, energy, and money into actually building equipment. And then we had to hire people, train them how to actually produce the product, how to package it, how to distribute it, all of that. and how to do all of that at a price that it was cheaper for people to pay us the $2.50 or whatever to get that meal effectively, that they would rather have that product that we had created than that money. That money was actually worth less to them or equal amount to that product. And so now for us to do all of that work, to do all of that research, to pay all of those employees, to negotiate all of those contracts, to be consistent, to learn about health standards and practices in manufacturing food, we did all of that and turned it into something where people are like, word, I would gladly give you this money in exchange for that product. And understanding that ultimately what you're doing is you're entering into a voluntary transaction where you've created something that people would rather have than their money. And so understanding then that somebody that has accumulated a lot of money has added a lot of value to the world. Now, of course, that's not always the case. And there are things where we're right to question whether that is something that we think is that valuable or not. But if it's happening on the open market is saying, yes, it is that valuable. That's why we're willing to do that. And so the area where people get most upset is in the area of finance. And so people look at bankers, they look at people that make money on Wall Street, and they say that isn't fair. Now, what I would say about that, the reason that people equate that or that they've been told the lie that those people are evil, that they're doing something that's bad, is because they don't feel like they have access to that same system. And that brings me to another part. You're not just told lies. The other part about money that becomes problematic is people aren't taught basic financial literacy. And there was a quote, I forget who said it, but they said, this is somebody very, very wealthy, one of the famous names. Unfortunately, I don't remember who it was, but one of the famous names in money. And they said that if people understood how money actually worked, they'd be rioting in the streets. And that's because the way that the system of money works is people are kept in the dark about how money enters the system, how money exits the system, how assets work, how liabilities work. And because people are kept in the dark about that, then other people are able to use their superior knowledge in an open marketplace to garner more of the money. Or even worse, if the government is using money to either inflate the currency or to redistribute money, which basically is stealing from one person, and yes, I'm using that word very intentionally, to give to other people that have not earned that money, that creates all this contention about how the money should be used, where it should be going, right? There were people that were up in arms when the airline industry was bailed out, or the banks were bailed out in the 2008 collapse. But how many of us knew that the banks have actually paid that money back and the government's actually made money off of the loans that they gave to the banks? So most of us aren't taught the ABCs of money. We don't understand how investing works. We don't understand the fact that money is your own ability to store your energy and effort and your efficiency, your intelligence, all of that across time, and that you're getting paid in direct proportion. This is an Elon Musk quote. You get paid in direct proportion to the difficulty of the problems you solve. So we have all this going on. Money's amazing. It's the great facilitator. It allows you the ability to carry your problem-solving abilities across time and space. But yet, it's all wrapped up in this system where if you're not educated in the system, then there are other people that are getting ahead way faster, that are making decisions about money that you don't understand, that you're not consulted on. And so you feel bamboozled, you don't feel educated, and you've been told lies, and so you're missing out on your own opportunities. And so one of the things that makes me the saddest is that people don't even understand that essentially what you're doing is trading time for money. And so the ability to trade time for money is great. I'm glad that we're able to do it. But if you understand that that's what you're doing, then you begin to understand that there's actually larger opportunities for you that go beyond just trading time for money. So at Quest, for instance, we weren't trading time for money anymore. What we had done was create a system that was making us money in our sleep. So the bars would get produced, they would get into a distribution channel, they would go out into grocery stores, literally all over the world, and people would be buying those whether I was awake, asleep, sick, whatever, it didn't matter. If I didn't go into work that day, we were still making sales. Now, most people are in situations where if they're not going into work, then they're not making money, especially if you're a part-time employee, or now as the gig economy just becomes massive, you don't even have a salary that you can count on or sick days that you can count on when you're not able to come into the office or you choose not to go into the office, that you're not generating money. And so you're in this very precarious situation where it really, really is this one-for-one of trading time for money. Now, once you know that you're trading time for money and you recognize that's only one way to do things, and that there are other ways, which I'll get into in a second, now your horizon begins to expand. And if, for reasons of low risk, you just want to trade time for money, fair enough. But what I'm hoping people understand, money's just a great facilitator, it's not evil, and that people that garner a lot of it are the people that have created the best system. They have traded the most value. So now, instead of just trading time for money, which is one way of exchanging value for money, your time is valuable, so you exchange that time for money. There are other ways to create value for people that isn't just trading time for money. Or maybe it's you trade time for money once, but then over time, it's not just that. So I'll walk you again through how I generated my own wealth. So it starts at Quest, recognizing that there's a hole in the market. So there's a problem. People want food that they can choose based on taste, and it happens to be good for them. But those products are difficult to figure out. They're difficult to manufacture. They're certainly difficult to manufacture at scale. They're difficult, tremendously difficult to manufacture at scale in a way that's shelf stable, okay? So we've got all of that going on. We recognized that. Then we did all the difficult things to make sure that we could deliver on that, which was incredible. It took a lot of time, took a lot of money, resources, learnings, decades worth of learnings coming into building all that stuff, finding experts, convincing them to work with us, all that stuff. And so now, not only is that making money while I sleep, but it's also creating what's known as enterprise value. So the company itself is becoming valuable to other people that would want to buy that company for whatever reason that might be. And now we get into how interconnected money is. And this is very much a quick nutshell, but just to give you an idea of why it's so important to be educated about money, to not be just rejecting people that make money, oh, these evil overlords of taking advantage of me. Learn about money, master the game so that you can play it very well. So the way the enterprise value works is this. If you have a company and they're trying to grow their revenues, a big reason, one of the biggest reasons why somebody might want to grow their revenues is that they want their stock value to go up. Now, the reason they want their stock value to go up is that the value of a company is predicated on the value of their stock. So how many individual shares of the company exist? This is assuming it's a public company. How many individual shares of the company exist? And what are people willing to pay for those shares? What's the going rate that at literally that moment? Because these fluctuate by the second. But in that moment, all of what are known as outstanding shares, so all of the shares that exist or are out in the world, if they were to sell all of them, how much would that be worth? Now, a company can not only sell if they hold some of those shares, they can sell them on the open market and earn money that way, but they can also borrow against that money. And so they're able to bring on debt in order to finance growth in the company, which could be adding new product lines, it could be expanding into different regions, whatever. You could use that money for a lot of different things. But people that really understand the financial game at a high level are able to use debt as leverage, okay? And so debt is often actually referred to as leverage. What they mean is maybe in the case of stocks equity, same thing. In exchange for the value of the outstanding shares, they can borrow against that. And so now, just by building a company that other people want to own a piece of, they're able to borrow money, right? So they didn't do more things. The collateral is the value of those outstanding shares. And so now they're able to grow their company even more. And so they build around their company what is often referred to as a moat, because it's very hard to compete with a company that has a massive value because of the amount of money that they're able to generate off of the value of the stocks, okay? And so that's just one way. And I don't even consider myself super educated on the way that money works, to be completely honest. This has been a journey I've always known how to, not always, in my professional career, I have learned how to make money, but investing money is actually a totally separate thing. And the more I learn about investing money, the more I'm like, how are they not teaching us this stuff? And it is complicated, but it's very learnable. And so the more that you believe this idea that people that have a lot of money are evil, that money itself is the root of all evil, then you willfully remain ignorant. And now, as you willfully remain ignorant, the people that are like, yo, I know how this works, they're going out and they're garnering all the extra resources. And now the divide between the rich and the poor just gets wider and wider and wider and wider. And that's how we end up here. But if you, like me, go, hey, because remember, I started out broke. I did not want to remain broke forever. And so I was like, I'm going to have to learn how this game is played. So first I learned how to make money, and now I'm on the journey of learning how to invest money. And the more that I learn about this stuff, the more I'm like, oh my God, anybody can do this. Literally, if you meet a minimum line of intelligence, which if you're watching this, I promise you do. If you meet a minimum line of intelligence, you're going to be able to figure this stuff out. And honestly, it's the most basic stuff that you want to do. ETFs, index funds, don't try to time the market. Don't try to become a genius. Just do really basic stuff. And now you're able to take advantage not just of time, but intelligence, efficiency, all that stuff that you can, remember, sock away into money. And now that money, whether it's cash, gold, stocks, bonds, whatever you decide to invest in, that's going to carry that value across time. That's so important to understand. And that's really just like that level one of getting ahead of the average person who's just trading time for money. And then as you go, you're going to find that there's levels to this stuff. But the more you understand, the more control you have in your life, the more you're able to generate money, the less you have to worry about money problems. Now, money is not going to solve anything but money problems, and that's something that's very important to understand. But as you learn to master the game of money, you really can get ahead. So please don't buy into this narrative that money's evil, that rich people have done something wrong to get that money. They just understand something that you may not yet understand. There are almost certainly a lot of things that you're doing that are going to keep you broke. The first is what we were talking about in the last question. It's all about financial literacy. Do you know how money actually works? As somebody who came to this game really late, I understand how easy it is to be educated, to be, dare I say, intelligent, and still not actually understand how money actually functions. And so you want to make sure that you're taking time to get financially literate. The next thing is, and some of these are going to be so basic and people don't do them, you need to stop spending so much money. Most people live paycheck to paycheck. Even people that are making six figures live paycheck to paycheck. It's something like 2/3 of people that make $250,000 a year still live paycheck to paycheck. So the goal is, instead of flexing on how much money you make, you want to make sure that you're living below your means. If you want to dramatically reduce the amount of stress in your life and set yourself up for success, you want to make sure that you're living below your means. Now, as you begin to live below your means, the first habit you're going to want to introduce is that you're going to start saving some of your money. So, of course, there's going to be an amount that you're going to allocate towards your living expenses, your house payment or your rent, your car payment, insurance, all of that stuff, food. But then you want to make sure that automatically you're saving money. If you're not automatically saving money, then you're walking down the path of remaining broke. So you want to make sure that you're living below your means, and you want to make sure that you're automatically saving money. Now, once you have saved up enough money that you have somewhere between 6 and 12 months of emergency cash on hand, if you get sick, if you hate your job, any of that stuff is exacerbated 1,000-fold if you're living paycheck to paycheck, because now you've got nowhere to go. There's no way for you to be able to weather that storm. And so it's what's known as a threshold event. Everything in your life may seem like it's going well until you hurt your back and you're unable to go to work for 2 months and you were living paycheck to paycheck and now you're in financial ruin. or God forbid, you get a diagnosis and you end up with medical bills and you go bankrupt from that. That happens so frequently. So you want to make sure that you have 6 to 12 months saved up. Now, once you have 6 to 12 months saved up, now we want to start thinking about investing. Now, if you're not investing, you're going to be getting eaten alive by inflation. Now, a lot of people are not thinking about inflation. And the reality is, even in a good economy, you're looking at inflation being around 2%. Now, right now, as we're recording this, inflation is about 8.5%. So you don't want to count on it being as low as 2% because that's not always going to be the case. Now, the crazy thing is, most people don't understand what inflation actually is. So inflation is your ability to buy something goes down every year. That's the same as losing money every year. So imagine if you have $100. Inflation, if inflation is 8.5% like it is now, the next year, by the next year, because it's happening every day, by the next year, you don't have $100. Even if you saved it, didn't touch it, it's locked away in your bank account. You now have the equivalent. It'll still say $100, but that $100 now only buys you the equivalent of $91.50. Okay? That's inflation. So your buying power, even though the number stays the same, the buying power is going down. So as of right now, as we're recording this, you would need to make $8.50 every year in order to stay at the buying power of your $100. Okay? So saving money, even though I just told you to save 6 to 12 months, you want to make sure that you understand that you can't just sock all of your money away and think that it's going to stay. And this doesn't haunt anyone more than me. I get it, because investing is nerve-wracking. But if you don't invest, you're not going to be able to keep up with inflation. If you don't keep up with inflation, you're going to be losing money over time. And if you're losing money over time, that nest egg that you're going to hope takes care of you at the end of the day isn't going to be there for you. And so you really have to be thoughtful about how you invest. What is up, my friend? Tom Bilyeu here, and I have a big question to ask you. How would you rate your level of personal discipline on a scale of 1 to 10? If your answer is anything less than a 10, I've got something cool for you. And let me tell you right now, discipline, by its very nature, means compelling yourself to do difficult things that are stressful, boring, which is what kills most people, or possibly scary or even painful. Now, here is the thing. Achieving huge goals and stretching to reach your potential requires you to do those challenging, stressful things and to stick with them even when it gets boring, and it will get boring. Building your levels of personal discipline is not easy, but let me tell you, it pays off. In fact, I will tell you, you're never going to achieve anything meaningful unless you develop discipline. All right, I've just released a class from Impact Theory University called How to Build Ironclad Discipline that teaches you the process of building yourself up in this area so that you can push yourself to do the hard things that greatness is going to require of you. All right, click the link on the screen, register for this class right now, and let's get to work. I will see you inside this workshop from Impact Theory University. Until then, my friends, be legendary. Peace out. Now, I'm going to give you the most basic advice on investing. Now, why am I giving you basic advice? Because all the smartest investors in the world are saying, if you don't know anything about investing, this is what you want to do. And because I do not consider myself a good investor, this is the only advice that I feel like I can give you that's actually sound advice. And that is to invest in passive things. So you're going to be investing in ETFs, in index funds. Now, index funds are the easiest to explain. An index fund is a group of companies. So rather than you saying, I'm so smart, I know what companies are going to do well, I would say, don't do that, because even the smartest people that do this for a living have a hard time being right over a long period of time. Here is a fact that most investors don't want you to know. Most investors over a 10-year period are going to lose to an index fund. So the really smart people with all the algorithms, they're all going to lose to just picking a big basket of companies and investing in those and not touching the money. And then doing something called dollar cost averaging. So rather than thinking that you're so smart that you're going to beat the market, right? I'm going to time it. I know when the bottom is, right? Because the best advice on investing you're ever going to get is the following: buy low, sell high. Now, I don't mean that as a joke. that really is the best advice you're ever going to get. The problem is most people can't do it. And the reason they can't do it is they get emotional or they don't have enough knowledge. And so I see so many people making these big bets because it's sexy, it's cool, and when it hits, you feel like a king. The problem is the house always wins. And the odds of you on a long timeline winning like that are virtually zero. And Ray Dalio made this really clear to me. So Ray Dalio runs the largest hedge fund in the world. It's called Bridgewater and Associates. And he says, Tom, look, I'm spending hundreds of millions of dollars on research. I've spent probably even more than that building the best algorithms in the world. I have a talent pipeline where I'm recruiting the best and the brightest people from across the entire world. I have fiber optic cables that allow me to make transactions that are measured in milliseconds. And you're competing against me if you're trying to actively trade in the market. And so that's why people like him who understand how this system works are saying for the average person, that's not the game that you want to play. The odds of you losing border on 100%. But if you go with something like an index fund, which is, there's one called the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is effectively the 500 biggest companies on the stock market. Now, the odds that you become one of the biggest companies on the stock market and stay there, you're going to stay there for something. I think the average company stays on the S&P 500 for like 16 years right now. Now, it's been declining, but still, that's a long time. And the way that the S&P 500 works is when one finally gets down to the bottom and it gets booted off, then they replace that with another one. And so you always have the top 500 companies in the stock market at that time. And there's a whole bunch of different index funds. It could be growth stocks, it could be stocks in foreign markets, and whatever one you're comfortable with. But at least it's a basket of stocks, and you're dollar cost averaging in, which just means that every day or every Wednesday or whatever, you're putting in a certain amount of money that you want to invest. And you're just going to leave it. You're not going to panic when the market goes down, and you're not going to, when prices are up, you're not going to buy into the euphoria. Now, why would you not want to do that? The reason that you don't want to buy into the euphoria is because when people are euphoric, prices are going sky high. Now, in those moments, and I have now lived through my first cycle where I was really paying attention to the market and it got euphoric. So now I know what it feels like. And what it feels like is it's always going to go up, that you're a genius. You're making all this money hand over fist. Now, the good news is when it all crashed, I didn't sell. I didn't buy like a fiend, it was going up, and I didn't sell when it went down, which means that I don't have any realized gains or losses. Now, of course, when things are going up, if you want to take money off the table, by all means do that. You then bought low and you sold high. Makes all the sense in the world. But the last thing you want to do is buy like crazy as the price is going up and then panic as the price drops because now you've bought high and sold low. But that's what most people do because the euphoria is so exciting and people feel like, oh, there's no way that I can lose. And then when the bottom falls out, they feel like, oh my God, it's only going down. This is all going to go to zero. And the reality is it might. But if you follow the principle of never investing more than you can afford to lose, then you can ride out the market. And if you're in a passive fund like the S&P 500, then it's just your dollar cost averaging. You're just buying at that steady interval. Now, when the price drops, you might buy more, right? If you know what a good deal looks like, hey, if the S&P 500 is down 20%, then maybe what I'm going to do is buy, instead of my $100 a week, I'm going to put in $150 or $200 if you have the capital to spare. Now you're getting things at a discount, right? I've heard it said, I think it was by Jaspreet Singh, that a recession is basically just a Black Friday deal for assets because now everybody's panicking, prices are falling, but if you've been passively investing into something as stable as the S&P 500, now you're just able to get more of that at a discount. It can be very advantageous. And this is why they say more millionaires will be made in a recession than in any other time, because all of these assets are on discount. Now, the question is, What's an asset? And so this is another habit that keeps people broke is they're not learning about money. They're not taking this time to figure out the difference between an asset and a liability. People are spending all of their money. Death habit number one, you're spending all of your money on liabilities and not assets. So the key is to understand what an asset is, to understand what a liability is, and to buy appropriately. An asset is something that when you buy, it's going to go up in value and not cost you money, or even pays you money, more money obviously than it costs you. If you have a liability, it's the exact opposite. So the classic example of a liability is a car payment. The second you drive a car off the lot, it's going down in value, and with very rare exception, it is never going to go back up. So it's going down in value, and you've got to keep making those payments. So you've got money going out while value is declining. Another one that people often think of as an asset, but is usually a liability, is your own home. Now, the reason that your own home is so frequently a liability is odds are you have a mortgage. Odds are it's the most expensive thing in your life. And it's not like you can just get out from under that liability, especially if the bottom falls out. You're going to have property tax depending on where you live, and you're going to have upkeep no matter where you live. So now you're pouring money into this thing, and maybe the value is going up, but maybe not always. And between the property taxes and the upkeep, you may be paying more than the value is going up over time, especially if you account for opportunity cost. So the odds of your house after taxes, fees, upkeep, all of that, being a better use of capital, if you're living in it, being a better use of capital than taking that same money and putting it into an index fund or something like that, a diversified portfolio, let's say, the odds of the house returning more on that are very low. Unless, obviously, if you get into rental properties and things like that and you're not living in it, so now it can actually generate cash flow, well, then it's just a math equation. This is how much I spend on average per month for insurance, property tax, upkeep, all of that. And if on average, the rent that you're getting is more than the money that you have going out, then it's very simple. Every month, I'm making more off of this property than I'm losing. Cool. Now you've got an asset. So that is the difference. If you're paying for something, it's a liability. If you're making money off of something, it's an asset. Now, most people don't have the discipline to buy assets because liabilities are usually the fun things. It's the cool clothes, it's the car, it's the fancy house, all of that stuff. And so people get themselves into a difficult situation because now the vast majority of their capital is going out. And this is how people end up in a position where they're living paycheck to paycheck. Okay, another thing I want to talk about that's a bad habit is that people are on a career path. Now, why is that bad, you ask? I have so many people around me at my company that are on a career path, and they're amazing people. But the people that really make money are the people that get so good at something that they can solve the most difficult problems that the company faces. So rather than thinking, oh, I am an editor, and so I'm going to get good at editing and I'm going to work my way up that way, you can basically predict what your salary is going to be. You're more or less going to get a 2 to 5% raise year over year. There'll be a couple times where maybe you're promoted into a role within that lane that has more responsibilities, and therefore you get paid more money. But you can just look at that career path and say, what is the person that's the highest in this chain that I'm working my way up? What do they make? That's what you're going to make, plus the sort of annual increases. On the other hand, if you look at who's the person in the company making the most money, full stop, now you begin to understand that just following that one career trajectory is not necessarily going to be as lucrative as solving those very difficult problems that the highest paid people in the company are solving. So I'll give you one example. If you want to get wealthy in a company, go into sales. I mean, that's just like the classic path to making money, because now if you're getting a commission off of what you sell, you're only hemmed in by how much you can sell and the price of the thing that you sell. So now you've got a lot more flexibility. So be very thoughtful as you're exchanging time for money. Don't forget that you also want to be in a position where you can exchange skill set for money, efficiency for money. All of those things allow you to break the basic time for money equation. And that is going to be far more lucrative. And now, as you're making that extra capital, if you keep your costs of living low, now you're able to invest into those assets. And as you invest into assets, now you're kicking off either cash flow or you're building up wealth over time in something that can be sold for way more than you bought it for. Okay, if you do all of that, you can finally break these habits that are keeping you broke. There are certain habits that basically all wealthy people have in common that you guys can put to use in your life. And the first one is going to be the most controversial, but I could not feel more strongly about this. They make no excuses. They take total responsibility for their lives. In fact, many people that fall into that category will take responsibility for things that clearly don't even have anything to do with themselves. I have said many times, this is arguably the most controversial thing I've ever said, but I'm telling you, if you adopt this in your soul and act accordingly, it will change your life forever. You will become an unstoppable machine. If I, Tom Bilyeu, were hit by a drunk driver, I would blame myself. Not because I don't think that the drunk driver caused the accident, because blaming the drunk driver gives all my power away. And I can't do anything about them. I can't stop people from drinking. I can't control the way other people drive, but I can control whether or not I'm on the road. I can control how good I get at defensive driving, how much I pay attention and looking out, all of that. All of those things I control. So if you take control of your life and make no excuses, now you're in a solution-oriented mindset. And people that get wealthy, let me tell you right now, all they think about are solutions. How do I solve this problem? Because you are, if you're wealthy, you must remember you're paid in direct proportion to the difficulty of the problems you solve. And if that's true, you better get very good at solving very difficult problems. And if you have something that's holding you back, like I'm not as smart as a lot of people, and that really pisses me off. But the reality is, pissing and moaning about it is not going to make me any smarter. All I can do is go make the most of what I have. I can go learn. Now, I could get pissed off at my mom. I could be angry at my dad. But the reality is that I am where I'm at from either how I was impacted as a kid in the developmental years, how I was impacted in the womb, my genetics, all of that stuff. But it's all done. The die is cast. There's nothing I can do about it. But there's 50% of my life that's completely malleable. And so I'm going to focus on that. And I'm going to, like other wealthy people, be obsessed with learning. You've got to be obsessed with learning. So you're not making any excuses. You take total responsibility for your life. And one of the ways you take responsibility for your life is even if circumstances are against you, even if you really have been dealt a bad hand, you know that you can get better at things. You have the only belief that matters. The only belief that matters is if I put energy and effort into getting better, I will actually get better. Now, why does that matter? Because skills have utility. Now, why does that matter? Because skills let you do something other people can't do. And that thing that it lets you do is solve problems that people want solved. What have I said like 8 times in this episode? That people will pay you in direct proportion to the difficulty of the problems you solve. So going out, learning, getting skills that have utility allows you to do things other people can't do. You're going to be able to get money other people can't get. That is something that wealthy people understand. Maybe it's not fair, but who gives a fuck? Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's going to solve these problems for you. And if you're turning to people for a handout, all you will ever get is what they're willing to put in your hand. But if, on the other hand, you're willing to go, hey, what's the hardest problem you have to solve? I'm going to make that problem go away for you. And all I ask in return is money. And I'm going to ask the amount of money that's either equal to the exchange for you or less, so that you're tripping over yourself to buy this thing. And that is precisely how you end up breaking the time for money equation. Because wealthy people understand you just can't charge enough for your time in order to make it worth it. So as you can imagine, there are people that offer to pay me a lot of money for one-on-one coaching, but I don't do it. And why don't I do it? Because unless you're willing to give me equity in your company to do it, I just can't charge enough to make it worth the time. So you have to break that time for money equation. You have to be getting ownership in something. And that's another thing that people understand, wealthy people. that real wealth is going to come from owning something. You own something that other people consider extraordinarily valuable, that is going up over time. Now, the reason that ownership matters is because you want to buy low and sell high. The reason that entrepreneurs end up making a lot of money in success, obviously, is because they start with something that's worth nothing. And they get very clever and they build something that over time goes from worth nothing to worth whatever the market values it at. So to give you an example, in my own life, talked about this earlier, we took Quest from a product I couldn't give away, literally. I know that seems ridiculous now, but when we first launched, I would stand at trade shows and tell bodybuilders who ended up becoming like the most ardent purchasers of Quest, and I would say, free protein bar. It's a free Quest bar. I will give it to you right now. We didn't even, in the beginning, we didn't even ask for an email. All you had to do was extend your hand, grasp bar. That was the sum total of the payment that we were asking for. And people wouldn't do it. So we had to take it from figuring out the formulation, building out the manufacturing, all the things that we've talked about, convincing people to try it. And we went from that to something that people were willing to pay $1 billion for. But in the beginning, it was worth nothing. And so the amount of money that we had to put in to get profitable, and then we reinvested all that money, and then ultimately we were able to sell it for that extraordinary sum of money. And it was a huge win, life-changing for all of us involved, because we started with nothing and we owned it and we built value in it. That's the key. You have to own something that goes up in value over time. So whether you bought low and you're going to sell high, or whether you were the one that created all the value, and so you didn't even have to buy anything. You just created value in this thing that later people wanted to own. So ownership is a huge key for people that end up generating wealth. You want to own, you want to hold. And so Warren Buffett talks about this a lot. Selling makes you rich, holding makes you wealthy. Now, what does he mean by that? If you want to sell something, you can get that influx of cash and you will have whatever that cash is now. But now you're fighting against inflation, right? So you've got the money, but what the hell do you do with it? What are you going to do with it that doesn't allow it to get chipped away by inflation? You're going to have to find somewhere to put that money that's earning you more money than inflation is taking. And so that's why holding really becomes the ultimate play if you're holding the right thing, because it's going up, 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 up over time. And then you can either borrow against that, and this is something that wealthy people understand. You can borrow against your assets. You don't even have to sell them. You use the asset as collateral. You go to a bank, and let's say that your collateral, sorry, it is your collateral, but your asset is what I meant to say. Your asset is going up, let's say 5%, 7% year over year, and inflation is 2%. Or like right now, 8.5% is the current inflation. Hopefully by the time you watch this, that won't be true. And your asset's going up by 10%. So now you're in a situation where even though inflation is chipping away at most people's ability to buy, and whatever you have in savings is going down by that amount of inflation, you've got this asset that's going up more than that cost. Now, if you've got a bank that's willing to give you a loan with that asset as collateral, and the loan is, let's say, 3 or 4%, but you're making 5, 7% off of that money that you're either using to reinvest in your company or buying stocks or whatever you're doing. You have to be very careful buying stocks on debt, which I advise people not to do. But just so you understand how money works. Wealthy people that know how to use debt effectively, that's what they're doing. They don't sell the asset, they borrow against the asset. And as long as there's a delta between the cost of the loan and the amount that the asset goes up, you now never have to sell the asset. You can just keep borrowing against it. This is how real wealth is made, real generational wealth. So yes, you can sell the asset and you can make that money, and you will have to do that over time in order to pay back the loan and all that stuff. But again, there's a delta. So even as you're selling pieces, you're making more than you have to pay back. It's really crazy, and it's freakish how long it took me to understand even basic things like that. So trust me when I say I deeply empathize with people who are hearing that for the first time. So understand that. They understand they have to own something. They have to own something that goes up in value over time, and that they want to own something ideally that they can borrow against. And so that's how selling makes you rich, but owning and holding can make you truly wealthy. All right. Those are the habits. If you follow those habits, you really can turn things around in your life. Be hyper careful about using debt. That's like the advanced level stuff, but just by way of making sure you understand how the system works, it can be a very powerful tool in the right hands. I know a lot of people are asking the question, do I have a spending problem or do I have an earning problem? Now, the great news is you've identified the only two levers that there are. You can either spend less money or you can make more money. Those are your two options. But I would say that most people have a problem with both. The odds that you're spending too much money are virtually 100% unless you're really able to sock away money week after week, month after month, year after year. And so the easy way to figure out is how much money, more money do you have at the end of the year than you have at the beginning? And if that number is going up and it's going well, amazing. Now remember, the goal isn't just to save a ton of money. You want to save 6 to 12 months. Beyond that, you want to be finding a way to invest. Now look, there are certain economies, because I feel bad saying this right now, knowing that I have a huge portion of my wealth right now in cash. So some of this has to do with seasons. The reason is I think that we're in a very bizarre period of volatility right now that I don't expect to last. I am now beginning to look more seriously at different assets because I do think that things are relatively depressed right now. Be aware though, I am not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. You should be very careful who you take financial advice from. So when it comes into the specifics, I would say go find somebody that knows way more about what I'm talking about. But just getting you to understand, I was feeling weird not admitting that right now I have a ton more in cash than I would normally. So anyway, there are different seasons, but for the most part, you don't want to have a bunch of money in cash. You want to have your 6 to 12 months, and then you want to have the rest invested in something that is very passive. You're not in there actively trading, going up against people like Ray Dalio. You're taking a basket of things. You're not trying to time the market. You're not trying to outsmart the market. You're saying, this is how I say it to myself. I'm not smart enough to pull this off. So I'm going to take a diversified approach to buying low, selling high. I can't time the market, so I'm going to dollar cost average in. And then I'm just going to make sure that my assets are going up over a long period of time. I'm not going to panic about little blips. So, and I'm talking like 3 to 4 year movements. So I'm not worried about something going down over a 3-year period. I'm just thinking, okay, I want to make sure that I have a very robust, diversified portfolio and that it's going up over longer periods of time. And just look at historicals. How has it performed historically? There are no guarantees, of course, but if something has done well over the last 100, 120 years, odds are that you can roughly count on something like that moving forward. And so that is the very basic approach that I would take. You want to make sure that at the end of the month that you've got more coming in than you have going out. And it really is that basic. And then just remember, there are 2 levers to pull. You can either spend less, which is always an option. Don't think yourself cool because you have a fancy car, fancy house, fancy watch, fancy clothes, none of that. I buy most of my clothes on Amazon. Obviously, I could afford a lot more, but I just don't tie. I actually do tie myself to my sense of style, which I actually do like, but I don't tie that to whether the clothes are expensive or not. And I remind myself constantly I could wake up broke tomorrow. So don't tie your identity to that. Don't be afraid to pull back your expenses. As Jaspreet Singh has said many times, if you can't buy something 5 times, don't buy it once. I think that is very good advice. So be super thoughtful about your spending and then go crazy on figuring out ways to make more money. Because personally, I couldn't live in a world where all I was doing was saving. I want to be excited about my potential upside opportunities. And so for a lot of you, figuring out a way to invest in yourself, to take a chance on yourself as either having a side hustle or being a full-blown entrepreneur will be the greatest journey of your life. Even if it doesn't end up paying off financially, it will be an incredible journey. And if you love it and you love that hustle, as long as you're not investing so much money into the bank that into the business that it becomes stressful if you lose it, then hey, that first one fails. Try again until you find one that succeeds. Successful entrepreneurs almost always have a litany of failures behind them. So don't stress yourself over that. Just make sure that you're in a position where you don't need a lot of money to survive, and then you can do a lot of cool and exciting things. The most important question you can ever ask about money is, can money buy happiness? And I'm begging you and pleading with you over the next however many minutes, Please pay attention so that you may learn easily what I learned with great difficulty. Money can't buy happiness. I'm sure you've heard that 1,000 times, but I want to tell you why it can't buy you happiness, but why people keep chasing money. Because people are always going to chase money. And the reason people are going to chase money is because it is extraordinarily powerful. But it can't touch how you feel about yourself. So I think that people have been told lies about money, like we were talking about earlier. But one of the lies that you've been told is that money isn't powerful. It's not going to make you feel the way that you want to feel. And the truth is, it isn't going to make you feel better about yourself, but it is the great facilitator. And so if there's something that you want to build, money is going to unlock that. Money can make you feel amazing, that you can do something incredible with your time, your opportunity, your knowledge. You can build something extraordinary that is this economic engine that serves people. I think entrepreneurship is turning your potential into skill set in a way that allows you to build this ongoing economic engine that allows you to create something that improves people's lives. That to me is entrepreneurship. And that's awesome. That feels amazing. So money's more powerful than people think, but it doesn't make you happy. What makes you happy is striving to add value to people's lives, to improve every day. Those are the things that are going to make you happy. So even if you're pursuing trying to create a business and that business fails and you end up not only not making money, you lose money. The failure will suck, don't get me wrong. But when you're going all out every day and you're improving and you're helping people and you're bettering their lives and you're sincerely pursuing getting better so that you can serve people in a way that feeds you and gives you more energy than it takes, that is the juice. The greatest thing that life has to offer you is the following. Okay, I'm telling you this from the position of somebody who's made a lot of money. The greatest joy life has to offer, the highest amplitude joy that life has to offer is the following. You are working very hard. You are scaling a mountain, and that mountain is incredibly difficult. And I don't mean a literal mountain. You're building a business. You're working to become a great athlete, whatever. You are working your ass off. It is hard. You are on this mountainside. You have frostbite in your fingers. You can barely hold on, but you're going. You can't believe it. You look down. It is a terrifying drop. If you fall, you die. It's nerve-wracking, man. The stakes are high, but you decide you're going to keep climbing. You're going to keep climbing. And the moment where you're working your ass off, but you can see the ledge, you're about to get to it. It's all working. Everything that you've been busting your ass, it's actually happening. Oh my God. And if I get to that top and I push myself up, it's success. It's a buffet. It's an orgy. It's whatever. It's something incredibly exciting that you have just been so amped to get up there to. That is way more exciting than the success, the having of whatever it is that's on your mountaintop. It's that moment there where you're clinging to your fingers. You're clinging to the side of the mountain with your frost-bitten fingers, and it looks like it's going to work, but it hasn't paid off yet. But if it does pay off, it will be extraordinary. That dream, that moment, it's all working. And if I pull this off, my dreams come true. That's better than your dreams coming true. Why? Because the way the human mind works, you can never eat a meal so satisfying that you're never going to be hungry again. You can never drink a drink so thirst-quenching that you'll never be thirsty again. You can never have sex so good that you never want sex again. It's just not the way that it works. We have this internal hunger that nature has given us to make sure that we keep going and we keep getting fed and we keep getting water and we keep procreating. We have to keep doing all this stuff. So you have, from an evolutionary perspective, buried inside of you an insatiable drive to keep going. So you can't ever have that thing. Even happiness is fleeting. You can't have happiness. You can't hold on to it. It's never going to be yours forever. It will come in and out of your life. But the things that create happiness, improvement, sincere pursuit, doing something you're passionate about, helping other people, those are the things that are going to make you feel the way that you want to feel. Now, the master trick that money pulls is one, because it's useful in the way that we talked about, the great facilitator, it allows you to build, people will chase it forever. When people get it, they get all these signals of success. And because people often struggle with money problems, they look at that and they think, oh my God, if I had all those cool things, I would feel about myself the way I feel about that person, and all of my stresses would go away. The reality is money will make money problems go away. It really will do that. And it's incredible. And it will alleviate a ton of stress in your life. But it will never make you feel about yourself the way you feel about that person, because you have misattributed being in awe of that person with the money. The reality is what you're in awe of is that they were able to translate their efforts into tangible success. Now that you should be in awe of, that you should strive for. And that striving, even if you're never able to achieve the level of accomplishment that you want, that striving, that improvement, that translating your potential into actual usable skill set, that will make you proud of yourself. That will give you self-respect. That will give you self-worth. Don't worry about the championship ring. Worry deeply about becoming capable of a championship performance, because nature will reward you for that. That's why it feels so good to make progress. Nature only has two levers, pleasure and pain. Nature's job is to ensure that you stay alive long enough to have kids that have kids. That's all nature cares about. Nature doesn't care about you. Nature doesn't care about me. Nature just cares that we stay alive long enough to have kids that have kids. The selfish gene hypothesis. If that's true, then we know that it's going to use the two levers that it has, pleasure and pain. It's going to make pleasurable the things that it wants us to do more of that are going to keep us alive long enough to have kids that have kids. And it's going to make painful the things that put us in jeopardy. And one of the things that is likely to keep us alive long enough to have kids that have kids is this pursuit of improvement, so that we can get better, so that we can acquire skills that allow us to hunt better, gather better, support the tribe better, fight better, whatever. But we need to constantly be improving because skills have utility. It lets us do things other people can't do. It lets us protect the group. It lets us protect ourselves. It lets us stay fed. It lets us survive a famine. It lets us survive warfare, all of that stuff. It lets us convince somebody to mate with us. Skills have utility. And so nature had to hardwire the acquisition of that improvement and make that incredibly joyful, to make it feel good. That's also why nature made that moment where, oh my God, this is going to work, feel so good. So you'd keep going, so that you would do those things, so you would reach that mountaintop. Maybe there were greener pastures, more animals, better berries, whatever. But you had to have that incentive. Money can't make that feeling inside of you. Money's never going to give you that. But becoming the kind of person that's capable of being so talented that they can solve problems that people are willing to pay for, that will make you happy.